Hi there, my name is Ethan Mills, and this is my final project for Corinthian Correspondence. Now, when we take some time to look at 1st and 2nd Corinthians, we need to be able to take a step back and understand the Corinthians and what Corinth is itself. We have these letters from Paul to these people who are asking questions, who there's issues and there's correction that is needed. But who are they? What are they going through? What's influencing them, whether that's emotionally, spiritually, or physically? So I want to take just a few minutes today and teach a little bit on Corinth and the Corinthians themselves. So when we first take a look at Corinth, it's not just that it's in Greece, but it's located on this isthmus, the Isthmus of Corinth. And what that is, it's this narrow land bridge between the Peloponnese and the mainland, if you will, of Greece. It's at this critical, important location of this small, narrow land bridge between the Gulf of Corinth and the Aegean Sea. So when we take a look at this, we understand that Corinth is a place of strategy. It's a place of importance. You have this connection between those two large sections of the country. But it's also important because it's a trade city, because when you have this isthmus, it's such a small place to cross compared to going all the way around the Peloponnese. And so it's not just the land part that's important, but it's also the fact that you have a harbor on each side, and they have something that the rest of the world doesn't when it comes to trade. And that is something called the dialkos, or what it literally means is the haulage. And so what it was is that Corinth is overseeing this region, and you would have these ships coming in from both sides of the Gulf, and they would come in and they would come to one of the ports on either side, and they would unload their cargo. And this dialkos would go from one side all the way to the other, and it was just literally this paved road with ruts in it that they would take out all of this cargo, put it in these carts, and then transport it across the isthmus, about 4 miles compared to going all the way around in a ship on dangerous seas. It was so incredibly important to not just trade, but to transport. And so Corinth is not just strategically on land, but now it is accumulating this wealth from trade. It's an incredibly important city. It's its own city-state. And so we kind of get this understanding that Paul has been there. He has helped establish a church, and these people are kind of well-to-do. However, there is a little extra tidbit that we have to look into to help us understand a little bit deeper. You see, Corinth was not just one city. It was two. The Corinth that we can think of is often the Greek city-state, but that Greek city-state was actually overthrown, and Corinth was destroyed in 146 BC. Just destroyed. The Romans wiped it out, they burned it down, and it was left in ruins. And it was about 100 years later in 44 BC when it was rebuilt. So when Paul is talking to the Corinthians, he's not talking to the old school Greek Corinthians that had been there for so long. He's not talking to the city-state. He's actually talking to the capital of this Roman colony, Corinth. And at this time, by the time Paul gets there, it's only been around for about 100 years. What does that have to do with anything? Well, remember the dialkos, it's still incredibly important. So this city has been rebuilt by the Romans. It's important to trade. It's the capital of this region. And all of a sudden you have important and wealthy people flooding into the city. You have freedmen, you have citizens from Rome coming in, you have people from all over, people invested in trade, and it becomes what Americans call the boom town. It's flooded with money. It's flooded with ideas. It's flooded with gods. It's flooded with temples. And all of a sudden, Corinth goes from being this ruined city that used to be great to a new city that is great. But all of that causes problems. With the amount of money coming in, you have this incredible separation of wealth. From the top people who are owning and running these trades, to people who are raking in money at the temples, to the slaves that are in the city. You have separation of gods. You have so many different gods, 36 different temples in the city. You have people that are worshiping Aphrodite and worshiping Apollos. You have synagogues. You have the Jews. You have these newly born Christians. And all of a sudden, when we take a step back, we understand the Corinthian mindset of what they're going through. Their questions about money and spending are kind of understood. The ideas of why separating things from the temple that used to be for the temple, why can't we do this? We understand that because of all the influence. And when we begin to understand the mind of the Corinthians, we can understand what Paul is trying to say to them. And so before we even get into the first and second Corinthians, we have to understand the people that it's being written to. We have to find ourselves in their shoes, and we have to understand what questions they're asking so we can understand what God is trying to say through Paul to the Corinthian church. And in the words of Gordon Fee, I will end, okay.